difference to the leadership of the state?
In regards to unfunded mandates, I lived the problem as Erie County executive for 8 years. When I saw the state of New York continue to place mandates on local government, local property taxpayers, and Medicaid was a huge problem. As we know that Medicaid costs in New York State are 2.5 times higher than California and Texas combined, so obviously we have a problem. But Erie County and every county in the state has been a victim of unfunded mandates, and as a member of NISAC, I led the charge. I was one of 4 county executives appointed during those years to go to Albany and get a Medicaid cap. So we were able, after many years, after Family Health Plus, Child Health Plus, I think they even talked about Dog and Cat Health Plus at one time in Albany, and asking local property taxpayers to pay for that too. So I was one of the county executives who went to Albany. We fought the governor at the time, we fought the legislature, and we got a cap on Medicaid. It was a very, very, very significant help to local property taxpayers, but we have to do more. Shared services, I lived it. We have to begin more cooperation, but even more important than that, I think we have to look at consolidations and mergers. In Erie County, you have 47 general purpose governments, 29 school districts, a city government, town governments. It's ridiculous, folks. If we're going to be serious about creating jobs and keeping our kids in Ontario, Erie, Monroe, wherever it is, you've got to cut local property taxes. And having redundant levels of service delivery systems doesn't make sense in 2018.
Thank you. And Jack Marin is not only the chairman of the Board of Supervisors, but he's also my supervisor in the town of Victor, and thank you so much for coming in today and sharing those thoughts with our candidates for them to take back. I'm also going to introduce Bob Green, who is the deputy chairman of the Ontario County Board of Supervisors, and he also is the supervisor for the town of Bristol. So he has 2 questions. The first question is going to be county specific, and then the second question is going to be specific as a town supervisor.
Thank you, Trish, and we need to thank Trish for everything that she has done here today. Thank you. I also want to say thank you to my boss, Jack Marin. Jack, you nailed it. Before I begin my question, gentlemen, I can't let this go. I've stood here fighting with this. As a law enforcement officer, I carried a gun and a badge and wore a uniform for a long time. I have the largest drug seizure in the history of this county. It was almost 100 pounds of marijuana. It was not used for medical purposes. Secondly, I start my day out every day with the effects of a gunshot wound. It's how many ibuprofen do I start my day with a young man who began his party with a load of marijuana. I'm sorry. I have a problem with that.
That's right. Hey, Bob. That's right.
Let me regain my composure. Raise the age for nonviolent 16 to 17-year-olds will be implemented by October 2018 by New York State mandate. The state will reimburse the counties only if they stay in the tax cap. We would have to take from other resources and services from the county to pay for the program if the county exceeds the tax cap. Do you feel that the state should reimburse these counties without the tax cap being tied to reimbursements?
Thanks for the question. Yes, I do believe that the state should reimburse the counties, and your question speaks to the larger problem here, the mismanagement that's going on at the state level under Andrew Cuomo, where money gets spent on the wrong things, and so you get these mandates and these reimbursement rules where the counties end up being jeopardized by the structure of these payments, and it needs to be shifted where the money needs to be driven more by what's going on at the local level, and the priorities of the counties and the county supervisors then going up to what's happening in state government and how that's being, how policy is being dictated more by local needs as opposed to, you know, these various mandates that are coming down from Albany. It was talked about in the last question, unfunded mandates, and you know how, you know, overspending, overtaxation, overregulation is a large problem that the leader of state government has to address, and I think this falls into that category.
Thank you.
Look, John, no, John, defer to my elder statesman.
But I'm in better shape.
We'll let the voters decide.
But the answer, the short answer is yes, but the real answer is the program should never have been passed in the first place. You got to understand the way he does business. He sees what progressive issue he wants to address and have a solution for, and he checks it off. It doesn't matter whether it works or not. Free college tuition, which isn't free, and there's all kinds of additional costs associated with that. And the same thing with raise the age. When that bill first came about, I was chairman of finance, and I cross-examined, it wasn't a question, I cross-examined the staff member who was in charge of that bill, asking him, okay, where does this person go? What courtroom is he brought to? What is the, who delivers this person to there? Does it go to family court first? Do you go, you know, how does it work? They had no clue. They had no clue. And they put it in effect, and I stopped it for 2 years, and now it's modified. But unfortunately, as a member of a group, ultimately, you don't have the dictatorial responsibility of saying what's right and what's wrong. So it shouldn't, it will be modified in January 1st, if I'm governor, to make the system work, not just be a political check mark.
Let me say that, as I said earlier, unfunded mandates have to stop. The problem is, if we don't elect a new governor, you're going to see more of that, because these are ways for politicians in Albany to appease the special interests. We'll pass a law, we'll increase spending on this, and we'll pass it down to local property taxpayers. And that's what's happened in the last over 10 budgets in New York State government. So we have to end the mandates, but be concerned, because the state budget this year, as we've been told, has anywhere from a $4 to $8 billion structural deficit. And we heard this governor's response, which is a traditional Democratic liberal response. Let's just raise more taxes, raise more fees. He's been doing it every year, and the legislature has been going along with that every single year. So we have to bring a stop to that. How do you do that? State government has to curtail spending, right? Not just raising taxes. We have to look inside. Where can we consolidate? Where can we merge? Why do we have a New York State Thruway Authority and a DOT? I'm looking to impose a who does what commission if I'm successful. We're going to look at every aspect of state government, every service delivery system, to find out how we can provide services better, smarter, and cheaper, because that's the only way you're going to stop the structural deficit. This deficit is not being fixed, ladies and gentlemen, and it was interesting to watch Albany's reaction. Oh my gosh, we have a $4 billion deficit. It wasn't unexpected. When they adopted the budget last April in 2016, the state controller says you have a structural deficit. Recurring revenues don't match recurring expenditures. So the legislature, to say that they had no idea, is not accurate. They knew they adopted the budget with a structural deficit, and they're not doing anything right now to fix it, except raise new revenues. It's time to cut spending.
Thank you. I come from a small town of 2,300 people. This tax cap has been a challenge because we do not have any type of significant growth in our town. Many of our smaller rural towns have additional challenges to stay within that tax cap. Many towns are using reserves to meet the needs of the community. What do you feel about the tax cap, and how would you help our towns meet this challenge? Thank you.
I guess I'll start. Again, it's consolidation and merging. There is no way that you're going to reduce the local property tax burden unless we figure out, again, I'm being redundant for the purpose of emphasis. We have to figure out how to provide services better, smarter, and cheaper. And you can't do it with 5 highway departments. You can't do it with 29 school districts. We've got to get smart, ladies and gentlemen, about how we provide those basic services. I believe that we have to look at all services across the board, especially in New York State. Why is the government involved in running airports and a transit system? Maybe we ought to look at outsourcing and privatizing those services so that local property taxpayers don't have to pick up the burden. So I'm about restructuring. I'm about turning it upside down. I'm about trying new ideas. To be a leader, ladies and gentlemen, you have to be bold enough and brave enough to say the way you're doing things isn't working. And you have to be brave enough to try something different. That's why I believe, of all the candidates running for governor, I have the best chance of being elected. Because I have a history of being able to attract votes beyond the Republican Party. I have a history of being a visionary, a person who understands that it takes new ideas and it takes a new way of doing things if you're going to change the outcome. Einstein said, if you believe you can do the same things the same way all the time and get a different result, you're insane. I'm going to tell you that there's a lot of elected officials in the state of New York who practice insanity, at least according to Einstein's definition. They're not willing to make change.
I gotta sit down, I'm sorry.
I forgot the question. Oh, tax cap. I got into the theory of relativity was going through my mind.
I'm like Family Feud, I can repeat the question for everybody that's up front.
I'm for the tax cap, to be very frank with you. I think it's cut down property taxes better than anything that has happened in Albany for some time. However, you can't have towns, villages, and counties getting into deficit situations, and the only way to keep a tax cap and make it sensible is to make sure that the state provides additional funding for whatever thing the state says the town, the village, or the county should be required to do. If that's the case, we should pay for it in the state of in Albany, and it's another way of saying mandates should be paid for if they're mandated. And so.
Because I think it does apply to finances as it applies to services. I mean, we need to look at spending and how we manage spending, but we also need to look at, you know, how the state and particularly localities are generating revenues. And in this particular area, Governor Cuomo has failed miserably in not letting the natural resources of this area help with the economic development of this area. The Marcellus Shale has 75 to 100 trillion cubic feet of potential recoverable natural gas, and that clean energy, and there's technology now, fracking, which he has stood against. You know, if we're able to get to that natural resource and make it happen, it would bring an economic revival which would help across the board in generating the kind of new economy and generate the kind of economic advancement in this area that would help with taxes, spending, and that kind of grassroots approach which the governor has stood against and let the jobs go south to Pennsylvania is something that, you know, I as governor, as a small businessman and as an entrepreneur would emphasize. That would help address holistically the problems that we face.
Okay, thank you. I am going to